Welcome, everyone. We've just started our live broadcast. It's not quite 12 o'clock yet, so we're going to just wait a minute or two before we officially get started. So stay tuned and we will begin shortly. All right, welcome everyone. Sorry, I just realized I was on mute. So welcome to today's session. We're just a minute after 11, so we're going to get started. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's great to see so many people joining us live today. So my name is Sarah Howard. I'm a graduate student experience specialist here at Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs at the University of Waterloo, and I'm really happy to be your host and moderator for today's live event. So today's event is the first in a series of programming that we're going to be offering for prospective graduate students. So throughout the next few months, we will be creating and delivering videos and virtual events to support you in the process of researching and applying to graduate studies. So if you haven't already done so, I would encourage you to visit our webpage and sign up for our mailing list so that you can receive more information about all of the upcoming events and resources. And I'm just copying a link to that mailing list in the chat there for you if you would like to sign up. All right, so before we officially get started with our content for today's session, I do want to acknowledge that at the University of Waterloo, much of our work takes place on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. On the main University of Waterloo campus here in Waterloo is situated on the Haldeman Tract, the land promised to the Six Nations that includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. I know many of you today may be joining us from outside of the area as well as we are all working remotely. Some of our staff also are working outside of this area, but we do want to acknowledge the traditional territory on which the University of Waterloo is situated, as this is an important step towards reconciliation. The active work towards reconciliation at the University of Waterloo takes place across all of our campuses through research, learning, teaching, and community building, and is centralized within our Indigenous Initiatives Office. And if you'd like to learn more about that work or the Indigenous Initiatives Office, I am posting a link to their site through the chat as well. Okay, so for our session today, we have 4 of our graduate funding and awards experts supporting us. So with me live, you will meet Heidi Musser, our Associate Director, Graduate Financial Aid and Awards. Also helping to answer your probably many questions in the background today, we have 3 additional members of our awards team. Miranda Balata, who's Manager, Graduate Financial Aids and Awards Programs, Laura Frazee, our Coordinator, Graduate Financial Aids and Awards Programs, and Elena Machado, Manager of Graduate Financial Aids and Awards Program. You may also see Rachel Hickey's name come through the chat or through the Q&A here. My colleague Rachel is also helping us out with managing all of your questions through the Q&A today. So for today's session, we're going to start with a presentation around funding your graduate education by Heidi. We'll then move into a live Q&A portion where Heidi will respond live to the questions that you either submitted in advance or are submitting live. Many of your pre-submitted questions are being covered in her presentation. For those that were not able to cover in that presentation, she will respond to those today. And as I mentioned, because we know this is an area where you may have a lot of questions throughout the session, Elena, Laura, and Miranda will also be responding to questions via text right through that Q&A feature in Zoom. So please also keep an eye on that Q&A as your question may be answered there instead of verbally by Heidi. So before I turn it over to Heidi, just a few more housekeeping items. First, this session is being recorded so that it can be available to those unable to join us live today, or if there's anything you'd like to review after, that will be available to you. The video will be posted to our Funding Graduate School webpage by next Friday, November 6th. So I'm going to share a link to that webpage through the chat as well in case you would like to bookmark or save that page for later. The link will also be shared with those who registered as well as those who have signed up for a mailing list once that recording is posted. All right, so for our Q&A session, you will see that the Q&A in Zoom is open. You can start submitting questions at any time throughout the session. As indicated though, Heidi will respond to questions verbally after her presentation, and then other questions may be responded to via text right in that Q&A. You always have the option to submit your questions anonymously if you wish. Please just select the Ask Anonymously option when you're submitting your question. We also ask that as you submit questions, please indicate whether you're an international or domestic student. This just ensures that we're able to provide you with the best response to your question. We will also do our best to get to all of your questions today. And following our event, we'll post the questions and answers in written form on our website so that you can review them if you want to look back. And we will also include answers to any questions we may not be able to get to live. All right, the last thing I want to mention is since I've sent some links to the chat there, you may have noticed that the chat feature is turned off for you. So you're not able to engage using the chat today. This is just so that we don't miss any questions that sometimes get accidentally sent through a chat instead of through the Q&A function. So while you can't engage through the chat, you may find some more links in there. I'll send links as they are relevant throughout the session. Okay, so those are all of my housekeeping items. So I am going to turn things over to Heidi now to begin her presentation on funding your education.
All right, great. Thanks, Sarah. Can you just confirm that you can see my screen? Okay, perfect. And I'm just going to take one moment here just to set up just quickly. Perfect. I think that we're ready to go. So good morning, everyone. Welcome to our presentation on funding your graduate education. As Sarah mentioned, my name is Heidi Musser, and I'm the Associate Director of Graduate Financial Aid and Awards. And my team works closely with departments and faculties to advertise, adjudicate, and administer a variety of internal and external awards, including some of the scholarship competitions I'll be speaking about a little bit later in this presentation. So my team and I, we work closely with external government agencies to manage major scholarship competitions. And in turn, we provide direction to our department and faculty colleagues and to current and prospective grad students regarding scholarship eligibility and the application processes for the funding opportunities that we have. We also adjudicate and make decisions on internal award applications that require an assessment of a student's budget, so your income versus your expenses, to determine if you actually have financial need and if there's some support that we can provide. My team is also responsible for managing the payment of awards through Quest, which is our student system, and applying it to your student account. So as an interested prospective grad student, and based upon questions that many of you submitted when you registered for the presentation, I know you're interested in what sorts of funding is available for you as a grad student here at Waterloo. And throughout this presentation, you'll hear me refer to awards, scholarships, and bursaries, and wonder, okay, why is she using these terms interchangeably, or what is the difference between them? So I'll just take a moment to explain the difference. We use the word award often as an umbrella expression that encompasses a variety of funding. But specifically, an award is something that's normally used for funding that's given based on financial need and other criteria such as leadership, community involvement, and academic excellence. Uh, a bursary, on the other hand, is something that we give based primarily on a financial need assessment. So you have a funding deficiency, your income is not sufficient to support your expenses, and we'll make an evaluation based on the budget that you submit as part of your application. And a scholarship is given primarily based on academic merit. So usually you have to have a first class standing, which is equivalent to an A- or 80%, as well as, academic contributions, leadership, publications, and other meritorious scholarships that you may have held. So during this presentation, I hope to answer many of the questions you have, and I certainly hope that you do find this helpful. So at Waterloo, we do provide minimum guaranteed funding for our doctoral students who are in good academic standing for the first 4 years. In other words, the first 12 terms of full-time registration. Minimum funding is reviewed annually, and any annual increase applies to both new, so incoming students, as well as current eligible students. Currently, our minimum funding is just over $24,000, but many programs offer more than this. If you are planning to apply for a master's program, funding may or may not be provided. It really depends on the program you're applying for admission to. For master's students in thesis-based programs, we recommend to departments that they provide a minimum of $12,000 for the first year of full-time registration, so the first 3 terms. And some departments do give more than that, so it's really best to reach out to the department graduate coordinator of the department you're interested in pursuing graduate studies in for specific details. What I would like to remind you of is that graduate studies is, in fact, a big financial commitment. You are encouraged to make an informed decision at the time when you are considering an offer of admission, and you need to look at your own personal financial resources, make sure that you have enough, either whether those are from savings, personal savings, loans from government, bank, private or family or friends, whether you've had co-op jobs or part-time employment. So make sure that you look at your resources to ensure that you can support the cost of tuition fees and living expenses for the duration of your program, especially if you are not receiving any funding from your department, which is something that you will actually know when you are offered admission to the program, because when you are given that official letter of admission, there will be funding details in that letter so that you will know what you should be getting each year for the duration of your program. If you are interested in finding out what the admission requirements and estimated program costs are for the program you're interested in applying to, I encourage you to visit our website under Future Students and then Programs. And we also have a web page on our site that includes approximate living costs that I encourage you to check out. And you can navigate to this from our Future Students webpage under Funding Graduate School. Another important thing to note is that scholarships and awards at Waterloo are paid on a term-by-term basis and are first applied to your tuition and fees. And then if there is a credit remaining on your account, then a refund would be released to you. And I will go into that a little bit more later on in the presentation. So as I mentioned, when you are offered admission to a graduate program, your offer of admission letter will provide details regarding any department funding you may be offered. So that funding will normally be comprised of internal awards that may or may not require an application, as well as teaching assistantships or research assistantships. And then there can also be other funding available through donor support that may or may not require an application. So we're very fortunate that we have alumni, private donors, companies that give us donations to support scholarships with specific eligibility criteria. And a lot of the time, departments or faculties will know what money they have available and the eligibility criteria, and they will just automatically select a recipient for those awards without the need for a scholarship application. Also, as I mentioned, minimum funding is normally only provided to eligible students in research-based programs. Limited funding is available to students in course-based master's programs, but so again, it's best to check with your department coordinator as to whether there is funding available. But if you are eligible, even if you're course-based masters, you could apply for the Ontario Graduate Scholarship or the Queen Elizabeth II Graduate Scholarship in Science and Technology. So I'm going to refer to those as the OGS and QE2 GSST scholarships, just for simplicity. You'll find that a lot of our scholarships do go by acronyms. So again, if you're in a course-based master's program, you could apply for the OGS or QE2. And if there is a significant research component in your program, you could potentially apply for a tri-agency master scholarship, which is referred to as a CGS-M. And again, I'll talk a little bit more about those scholarships later on in the presentation. So if you have specific questions about what funding you may or could be receiving, or are interested in the application process and deadlines for teaching assistants and research assistant positions, it's best to speak with the department graduate coordinator, as each of them will have sort of their own process and timelines. So in case you're wondering what a TA or RA actually is, I'll just take a moment to explain. A TA is a teaching assistantship. So this is a position held by students to assist faculty members with instructional responsibilities. So in other words, helping them teach a class, maybe you're substituting for them, teaching a class or two, marking papers, holding drop-in sessions to help students. So students may come up to you, make an appointment, and want you to review a paper, or maybe they're struggling on a lecture that was given. So you'd be there to offer support to these students. An RA is a research assistantship, which is a position that you hold to perform research duties for a faculty member. So in other words, a faculty member would hire you to do research that would be outside the scope of your own research, which is something that you'd be doing towards your thesis. It differs from a graduate research studentship, which I'll talk about in the next slide. So as you can see, the rates are posted here on this slide, and they do not include 4% vacation pay. They also assume that you'd be working 10 hours a week for 16 weeks. So that's 4 weeks per month times 4 months in a term. And unlike scholarships and awards, these positions are actually paid as salary on a monthly basis through payroll. Again, because you're being hired by a department or a faculty member to support them. So it is considered earnings, and then you would get a T4 income tax receipt in February through Human Resources. So the Graduate Research Studentship, or GRS, is something that you might hear about. This is, again, different from the GRA that I spoke about in the last slide, because a GRS directly supports you as you are in your research-based program. It's financial support that is often paid through the supervisor's research grant or department operating funds, and is used to support you on a term-by-term basis while you are conducting your own research towards your thesis. And it's paid as a scholarship on a term-by-term basis. Part of being a graduate student in a research-based program is actually sharing your research, explaining to others what you are doing, what's inspiring you, and what research you are doing that's really innovative and new. And hopefully you'll have the opportunity and interest in attending conferences to present your research. And in order to assist with costs associated with that, we have the Graduate Studies Research Travel Assistantship, which offers a maximum of $500 from GSPA, so our office, Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs, or GSEF, to reimburse you for expenses incurred. Applications are processed through our office and are collected 3 times per year for this fund, and students can receive it a maximum of 1 time per year. And this year, because this is a very special year due to COVID, we're allowing this assistantship to be used for virtual conferences, providing that you're still presenting your research. It can't simply be used to attend a conference and listen to what other people are talking about. You actually have to be presenting your research. So on this slide, there's a reference to GSEF, and GSEF refers to the Graduate Studies Endowment Fund, which was created in 2001-2002 by a graduate student referendum to provide some funding opportunities and help improve the graduate student experience. As part of the graduate tuition and fees, there's currently a $20 fee that goes to support GSEF initiatives, one of which is this program, the Travel Assistantship Program. And if you're interested in learning more about GSEF, feel free to visit their website. It's gsef.uwaterloo.ca. We also have a database of funding opportunities. So if you're looking just for funding opportunities in general, you might want to look at our database. It's basically a search engine where there's hundreds of scholarships on the database that include both internal and external award opportunities that we administer. So you can search on various criteria such as program level, whether you're master's or doctoral, the type of award, whether it's a scholarship or a bursary, etc. And then, yeah, you know, again, there's lots of scholarships on there. So just take your time and look through there and see if there's anything that you're eligible for. So in summary, there's various resources available to assist you in funding your graduate education. It depends on the grad program as to whether scholarships are provided for a certain duration, 1 year for a master's or 4 years for PhD. And I encourage you to apply for external scholarship opportunities, especially the tri-agency and OGS or QE2s. You're also encouraged to seek out provincial loans or bank loans and private loans or loans from family or friends because the scholarships may not necessarily be guaranteed, especially if you are in an online master's program or course-based professional master's program. So again, please reach out to the coordinator of the department or program that you're interested in pursuing and ask them those questions because they're going to be best suited to respond to you. So in this next section, I'm just going to introduce you to some awards that are available based on financial need. We're fortunate at Waterloo to have various bursaries available to assist students who have demonstrated financial need. For these next set of awards, an assessment is done based on a specific award application that includes a budget, so your income versus expenses, and a written explanation explaining the students, like your circumstances and your financial plan. So the first one I'd like to talk about is the contingency bursary. This bursary program is primarily for international grad students who experience extenuating circumstances that could not have been reasonably predicted or expected after you start your program. It's available to support short-term financial assistance or shortfalls for educational and reasonable living expenses. It's not typically given to students who are in the first year of their program, and master's students can receive it a maximum of one time, while doctoral students can receive it twice throughout their program. Again, it's based on something that was really unforeseen. We expect that you have a financial plan in place and know what kind of funding you will or will not be receiving when you accept an offer of admission. But we know that emergencies happen, something unexpected can happen at any time. So we do have this opportunity available. The value does vary, but it's restricted to a maximum based on your situation and program. Typically, we would not exceed $5,000 for PhD and research-based master students, and it would be about $2,500 at maximum for course-based master students. Now, for domestic graduate students, there is a full-time bursary that's administered through the Student Awards and Financial Aid Office. It's meant as a supplement to other resources that you have, such as savings, employment income, parental or spousal contributions that you already have. And it's expected that if you apply for this, that you will have also applied for and possibly be in receipt of OSAP, which is the Ontario Student Assistance Program, or a provincial student loan. We're very fortunate at Waterloo to have a parental leave bursary. We know that graduate students are further along, they're older perhaps, or they're just further along in life experiences and perhaps want to start a family or have already started a family. So we have the parental leave bursary that provides up to 2 terms of funding to eligible students who become parents through birth or adoption. The value of this bursary is intended to maintain your income at about 95% of the average level of income that you were receiving during the 3 previous academic terms, minus tuition, up to a maximum of $5,000 for the first term and a maximum of $3,000 for the second term. And on average, we support about 40 students per year through this program. And my colleague, Miranda Bellotta, who's behind the scenes, she manages this program. So if you have any questions, feel free to check out our website and you can find her contact information there. We also have the daycare bursary, and that's available to students registered full-time, and it's meant to assist with daycare expenses that can be incurred through a daycare center, a home daycare, before and after care through schools or camps. And the value is based on income, expenses, and the number of children requiring daycare. We assess the applications on a term-by-term basis, and this program supports about 60 students per year. Another program that we're really fortunate to have is the Graduate Student Medical Leave Award. So we initiated this award about 3 years ago. It's meant for research-based master's and doctoral students who need to go inactive for medical reasons. Students have to have been registered full-time for at least one academic, one academic term and have been in receipt of a financial package from their department in the term immediately prior to changing their status to inactive. Medical documentation will be required, which you would provide to our accessibility services office, and they would assess that documentation. It's completely confidential. We do not find out what the reason is, other than that you need to go inactive for medical reasons, but we don't know the specifics of those medical concerns. Again, it could be physical or mental health. It doesn't matter. As long as it is a medical reason that you need to go inactive, we will consider you for up to $5,000 for this award, and it's available one time throughout your program. Again, we also understand that emergencies arise. Perhaps you're waiting on your GRS to be paid for you, or because TAs or RAs are paid monthly, maybe you've got an unexpected expense that's occurred. We do have an interest-free emergency loan available to registered students if an emergency has arisen and you're waiting on another source of income. So you do have to have proof of repayment in order to apply for the emergency loan. It's for a short duration. It normally needs to be repaid within 90 days. And the value really depends on your situation and method of repayment. There's no deadline to apply because obviously emergencies can arise at any time. And payments are usually made within 3 business days through direct deposit. Okay, so I'm going to switch over in the next set of slides and talk about some of the major external scholarships that we manage on behalf of government agencies. And you can access more information on these next scholarships on the External Awards webpage as indicated on this slide here. So I am just going to spend a bit more time on these next set of slides as I want to ensure I'm thoroughly explaining some things that I think you should know, especially since there are some deadlines coming up that you need to be aware of in case you're planning to apply this year. So the federal and provincial scholarship competitions normally occur in the fall term, with the deadlines varying depending on the actual competition. And then the results are typically released in the spring. So usually March or April is when the scholarship results start being released. Most of the competitions have a departmental level and possibly a faculty level ranking or selection process and an institutional level selection process. And although you may be receiving minimum funding through your department, we highly encourage eligible students to apply for these scholarship opportunities because they are based on academic merit, and it can help emphasize to others, like when you're applying for a job or other scholarships or even postdoctoral positions. It looks good to have these on your CV because it demonstrates how competitive you are and how strong of a candidate you are, that you're worthy of being considered for additional opportunities. Also, students who choose to study at Waterloo, and we hope that you stay here for grad studies, and if you're successful in receiving some specific major federal and provincial scholarships, you can also receive the President's Graduate Scholarship, which is a top-up of at least $5,000. Our scholarship competition web pages start getting updated as early as June based on when the agencies update their competition material. And then once we launch, we call it launching the scholarship competitions, we advertise them in multiple ways through emails, social media, websites, etc. So we make sure that we really get the information out there so that you are aware of it. So for these competitions, students normally do require a minimum first class average, which is equivalent to an A- or 80% in each of the last 2 full-time academic years to be eligible for consideration. Oftentimes it's students with averages in the mid to high 80s and higher who are successful, but it really varies on the applicant pool. Your success can depend on a variety of qualities, including grades, research proposal, or your statement of interest, referee assessments. Our scholarships do require written appraisals from referees, your leadership skills, your contributions or publications, and the number of those publications or contributions can also vary depending on the program that you're in. And any other meritorious scholarships that you've held. So there is a wide variety of criteria and contributions that we do look at to determine one's success. So students are not automatically considered for these scholarships, based on your application for admission. You do have to fill out a specific scholarship application during the competition cycle. And normally students apply for both a tri-agency scholarship as well as the provincial OGS or QE2 in the same year to sort of double your chances. And then if you're successful with both, that's terrific, but you can only accept one. But that's okay. If you're successful with both, you can indicate that you're declining one. Normally what happens is a student would accept a tri-agency scholarship because it's of higher value, and then they would decline the OGS scholarship or QE2. But that is something that you can still put down on your CV that you were successful, but you declined it. Also, some of the pre-submitted questions were about seeing if there's scholarships that could be taken abroad. Maybe you want to go to the US for graduate studies. And so some of the tri-agency doctoral scholarships can be taken abroad. So if you are interested in pursuing a doctoral program at a foreign institution, that is possible. And I just encourage you to visit the specific tri-agency website that you're interested in applying to the scholarship for details. So students who, like, if you're not already in a grad program, so if you're in your last year of undergrad, you definitely should be looking into the eligibility requirements and application processes of these scholarships, because you can apply for the CGS-M and OGS domestic scholarships before you're even in the graduate program. And when we talk to students, when we were on campus, physically and meeting with students, or if students call us and reach out, they're a little bit surprised because they might say, well, I'm not in a grad program. I'm just in my last year of undergrad. I have to apply now. And yes, you do, because it is a lengthy process to apply. There's hundreds and thousands of scholarship applications that are being submitted to the agencies. So it is a lengthy process. It takes the committee members time to review the applications. So yeah, you do apply like 6 to 8 months in advance. So please, if you're considering grad school, now is the time that you need to start applying. Okay, so the federal scholarships we most commonly manage are referred to as the tri-agency scholarships. So there's 3 agencies, and those include the following. CIHR, which is the Canadian Institutes of Health Research. So if you're conducting research that's related to health sciences, then you're likely going to be applying for a CIHR. NSERC is the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council. This would include people conducting research in the STEM disciplines, so science, technology, engineering, and math. And then SSHRC, which is the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council. So typically your arts and social sciences or even environment fields. All of these tri-agencies provide funding at both the master's and doctoral levels, and students do need to be Canadian citizens or permanent residents of Canada for most of them. The Vanier, which is the most prestigious of the tri-agency doctoral scholarships, that one is open to international students. The funding values range from $17,500 for 1 year for the master's scholarship to $50,000 per year for a doctoral scholarship, and can be held for up to 4 years, depending on the scholarship awarded. So as I mentioned, competitions take place typically in the fall and the winter terms, with decisions normally released as early as March. And then successful recipients can start their scholarship as early as the spring term and as late as the following winter term. So as an example, for the CGS-M, that deadline is December 1st. and then the results get released in April. So you could start your scholarship as early as May 2021 or as late as winter 2022. So institutions do receive quotas, and we can only award or forward to the agency, depending on the competition, there's different processes, a limited number of applicants based on the allocations. For the master's awards, the award decisions reside at the institutional level. And then for the doctoral competitions, for the tri-agency doctoral competitions, the decisions reside at the national level. So just to give you an idea of our numbers for the competitions, for last year's CGS-M competition, the quotas and approximate number of applications we received were for CIHR, our quota was 5, and we received about 40 applications institutionally. For NSERC, our quota was 58, and we received about 350 applications. And then for SSHRC, our quota was 38, and we received about 150 applications. For this year's doctoral competition, our quotas are 11 for CIHR, 142 for NSERC, and 41 for SSHRC. So we do get a lot more applications generally for all of the tri-agencies than we have allocations for. So again, it is very competitive, but if you are eligible, we encourage you to apply because again, as I said, the candidate pool does vary from year to year. And if you are planning to start a master's program next year, you're encouraged to consider applying for the CGS-M this year. The first deadline that's coming up is November 20th. That's the deadline by which you need to request your transcripts, your Waterloo transcripts for your application. And then the application deadline itself is December 1st. The thing to keep in mind with the CGS-M is that you are able to identify a maximum of 3 institutions where you want your scholarship application considered. So if you're not sure if there's different programs that you might be interested in, you can identify 3 institutions. Now, if you are offered the CGS-M from each of those 3 institutions or 2 of them, you can only accept the scholarship at 1. So as soon as you accept a scholarship offer from one of the institutions, it automatically declines the offer that was made from the other 2. And once you do accept the scholarship, it's not transferable. Okay, so that's just something to keep in mind. Okay, so the next scholarships are the provincial scholarships. So the major provincial scholarship that we manage the competition for is the Ontario Graduate Scholarship, or OGS, and its close counterpart, the Queen Elizabeth II Graduate Scholarship in Science and Technology, or the QE2 GSST. So you apply using the same application, but the QE2 is only available to domestic students, while the OGS is available to both domestic and international. The scholarship is valued at up to $15,000 per year for 1 year. And for this scholarship competition, we receive a lot of applications. We actually receive over 1,000 applications every year. Unfortunately, we still have not received this year's competition quota. So just to give you an idea, last year our quota was 166, and 5 could be awarded to international students. 2 were reserved for students who self-identified as Canadian Indigenous students, and 159 were allocated to the 6 faculties for final selection. So they actually, we have 6 faculties on campus, and they make the selection of the domestic OGS recipients. Our quota for the QE2 GSST last year was 36, And those are only available for domestic students in the STEM disciplines, so science, technology, engineering, and math. These scholarships are not transferable. So if you are interested in undertaking graduate studies at a different institution within Ontario, you need to find out what the application process is for that scholarship at the institution where you want to attend, and then adhere to their deadlines, because each institution within Ontario has a slightly different process and time frame to apply. So you'll need to apply at each of the institutions where you're thinking of going. At Waterloo, our deadline for the domestic OGS QE2 competition is February 1st, 2021. So I think that this information is timely. It gives you some time to think about it and check out our website for to make sure that you're eligible and look at all of the requirements for applying. So trust me, we know, my team and I know full well that applying for these scholarships can be daunting. There's a lot of information out there, and it can be overwhelming for sure. So it's definitely something to consider seriously, as a lot of time and effort are put into applying from yourself as the applicant, from your referees who write the letters of assessment, from the departmental, faculty, institutional selection committee members, etc. So if you're eligible, we highly encourage you to apply, because again, you never know. The candidate pool varies, and we want you to be successful, and we're here to support you with applying. So that being said, we do have resources available to assist. For each of the major scholarship competitions that I'm talking about today, the tri-agency and the OGS or QE2, we have dedicated web pages that contain information pertaining to the eligibility, application instructions, and processes for applying, checklists and key steps, as well as timelines. So we try and make sure that we're as transparent as possible, giving you as much information as you need on our web pages. And then in September of each year, we, over the years, we have changed sort of how we deliver the information. We used to give live presentations like in the Theater of the Arts or Hagey Hall, and we've done webinars. This year we held a live Q&A session where prospective applicants could ask their scholarship questions and hear some insider academic advice. This past September, Professor Jeff Casello, who is our Associate Vice President of Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs, and the chair of our institutional graduate scholarship selection committees. He provided a lot of helpful advice to students interested in applying for these major scholarships. And if you didn't get a chance to see the presentation or want to hear Jeff's advice, please check out the video. It's posted on our scholarship competition resources webpage. And I'm sure that you can get a lot of tips and advice from there. We've got a lot of positive feedback from Jeff's presentation, so we're so grateful to have that available. If you're applying for the scholarship, we also encourage you to seek feedback on your draft applications from your current faculty supervisor, perhaps a faculty member who knows you reasonably well. You took a class with that particular professor. You've got a strong relationship. They know you, and perhaps they could offer some constructive feedback. You could also reach out to the graduate officer or associate chair of your department, fellow scholarship applications for peer review, as well as from the Writing and Communication Center. Our colleagues in that office have lots of experience with scholarship applications. Some of the staff there have received these scholarships themselves, and they're available by appointment to offer you some feedback. One thing I urge is please don't leave applying for the scholarships to the last minute. You need to give yourself and your reviewers lots of time so that you can submit the best possible application. Again, it is very time intensive. There's a lot of detailed instructions. in different aspects of the application. So make sure that you read instructions, and we actually encourage you to have the instructions available, say on one screen if you've got multiple monitors, or print them out, have them available while you are completing the application on the application portals. Also, keep in mind, even if you're not 100% sure that you want to pursue graduate studies, it's a good idea, if you're eligible, apply anyway. Maybe you don't know if you're going to apply for a master's degree or continue on into a PhD. It doesn't matter. Apply anyway if you're eligible, because if you're successful, you can always turn it down if you decide not to go into the grad program. So, and if you don't apply and you do go into grad studies, then you could be, disappointed that you didn't apply, or you'll have to wait until the next year to apply, because these scholarship competition cycles only occur once a year. Okay, so now that I've gone through the various funding opportunities and some tips on applying, you'll likely want to know how you actually receive your money. So as I indicated in the beginning of the presentation, my team is responsible for managing the payments of all graduate awards that are paid through Quest. The majority of institutional awards, including GRS, are initiated by your department or faculty on a term-by-term basis to our office. Once our office receives the electronic paperwork for awards, the award gets coded to your account in Quest. And unless you have made a bank payment, scholarships that are paid through Quest are first applied to your tuition and fees, providing that you've actually arranged your fees. That's an expression that we use here at Waterloo. And you do that through Student Financial Services, through submitting a promissory note. If there's a credit balance on your account, then a refund is released. Now, a thing to note is that at this particular time, and because of COVID, if you are an international student and have not yet arrived in Canada and don't have a Canadian bank account, you'll need to work with the folks in Student Financial Services to arrange to have any credits released to you. And as indicated also on our website, funding you receive can change because of various reasons. For instance, if you change your enrollment status from full-time to part-time, or you go inactive, your award may be adjusted or canceled. If you change your make a change in your immigration status, for instance, you're international and now you become a permanent resident, perhaps the International Doctoral Student Award that you were receiving is now going to be canceled because you don't meet the eligibility criteria any longer for that award. If you've had changes in funding, so if you receive certain major awards, then your departmental or institutional funding may be adjusted. So if you have any questions about that particular aspect, I encourage you to contact your department graduate coordinator. Okay, so you heard me mention OSAP earlier on in the presentation, and based on some pre-submitted questions we've received, some of you are wondering whether or not graduate students are eligible to apply for OSAP. The answer is yes. You can still apply for OSAP as a grad student. So OSAP is the Ontario Student Assistance Program. It's a provincial loan that provides eligible students with assistance based on financial need. There's one online application on the OSAP system that allows you to be considered for any OSAP loans and grants based on your income and expenses for the term for which you're applying for that funding. The grants and loans are actually released and managed through our Student Awards and Financial Aid Office. They're not managed through Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs. So if you have questions, then you'll need to reach out to SAFA. Once your assessment comes through, and if you are able to receive both a grant and a loan, you have the option of accepting only the grant portion, which does not need to be repaid. So as I indicated, it's the Student Awards and Financial Aid Office, or SAFA, that manages OSAP and the loans. So if you have questions, please reach out to those folks there for assistance at the website link on this slide. Okay, so that concludes my formal presentation. I will turn it back over to Sarah, and I think that there might be some questions. Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Heidi. Lots of information there, and I know that covered a lot of the pre-submitted questions that we got. So I hope that for those of you that had some of those pre-submitted questions, that you found those answers that you're looking for now. I do also see that the team has answered a large number of questions in the background, so please make sure you're checking that Q&A system. Your question may have been answered via text there. So while the team continues to answer some questions in the background, I will move to some of our some of the questions that we received in advance, and then we'll get to some live questions as well here. So the first question that I have for Heidi is, how do you recommend we draft a research proposal? Oh, you're just still muted there, Heidi.
Sorry, thanks, Sarah. Good question. So about how to draft a research proposal. So in order to draft a research proposal, it's best to review the criteria of the scholarship that you're actually applying for. Normally, a research proposal needs to include background information that places your proposed research within the context of current knowledge that already exists in that area. You should be articulating the methods by which you will conduct the research and highlight what the purpose of your research is. So really demonstrate its potential impact and the benefit to society. You're applying for money and you need to capture your audience and convince them that your research objectives are meaningful and warrant receiving funding. Also, as I mentioned in the presentation, seek input and feedback from your colleagues, fellow students, your current supervisor, or faculty members who know you, and the great folks in the Writing Communication Center. Thanks, Sarah.
Great, thank you, Heidi. And I'm putting a link in the chat as well to our Writing and Communication Center. They do have a lot of great resources, so you can take a look there. I also do see we had a question in the chat around whether the slides will be available at the end of the workshop. I didn't mention this at the beginning, but yes, you can get a copy of the recording as well. We'll have a copy of the slides there. I know Heidi had lots of really useful links, so you'll be able to access those as well when we do post the recording. All right, the next question here for Heidi is being accepted into a master's program contingent on having funding?
No, it's not. You don't have to have, your own student funding, or like, they're not going, when they're considering an application for admission, they're not looking necessarily to see whether you're sponsored student or not. But if you are applying for a program that doesn't provide any scholarships, then you do need to make sure that you have your own sufficient personal financial resources to support the cost of tuition, your fees, your living expenses for the duration of your program. Okay, I hope that answers the question, Sarah.
Great, thank you, Heidi. Okay, so our next question here is from a prospective student who says they're from India and pursuing their master's degree currently in China with full scholarship. Are they eligible to apply for a PhD program with full scholarship?
Yes. Yep. So students who've got an external scholarship or sponsorship can apply for admission. It's also recommended, though, that you just discuss with the proposed department and the faculty supervisor any contingency plans in case that scholarship or sponsorship ends before you finish your program. We do have students who are sponsored from their international government or their home government. And if that funding is only for 3 years instead of 4 for a PhD, then you kind of have to figure out, well, how am I going to fund that 4th year?
Great, thank you, Heidi. Okay, the next student here says they're applying for online study as they're living overseas. How can they transfer money to fund their study? For example, do they need to have a bank account in Canada?
Okay, in terms of transferring money, like paying tuition if they are abroad, there will be information on how to pay your student tuition on the Student Financial Services website. I'm not sure if you're able to provide a link in there, or we can follow up later, Sarah.
Yeah, I've put a link in the chat for that.
Okay.
Yes, please check out that link for more information.
Okay, thanks, Sarah.
Great, thank you, Heidi. All right. The next question here. So this is a student looking to pursue a PhD. After the PhD, they're wondering what funding opportunities are available for postdoctoral fellows at the University of Waterloo.
Okay, good question. Somebody's already looking into postdoc opportunities. That's great. We do have funding opportunities on our website under postdoctoral affairs. It's find postdoc funding. The opportunities, there are several opportunities available, but there's only a few that we are actually involved in. Myself, actually, I manage a few of the competitions. The AMTD, that's a new one that is funded from a private donor. And we just had the first competition earlier this year. We plan to continue it until 2025. We haven't yet updated the information on the AMTD on our website. I suspect that we'll probably be launching it in November or December for the 2021 year. There's also the Banting Postdoctoral Fellowship. That one, boy, there's lots of competitions. I'm trying to remember now. I think it launches normally in about April. So that competition is over for this year, but there is information on our website about that in case you're interested in applying next year. And then there's the Polanyi Prize, which we've just launched recently. So that deadline is coming up, and so you can visit our postdoc funding website for information on that.
Great, thank you, Heidi. Great to know of lots of different resources for that. And I did also post a link in the chat to our Find Postdoc Funding webpage. So if you're interested in learning more, you can check out that website. Okay, so the next question here is a student who's interested in the Faculty of Mathematics, and they are wondering, what is the average amount of funding for doctoral students in the Faculty of Math?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have that available to me at this time. So maybe you could just reach out to the department graduate coordinator. There's a list of coordinators on our website. Sorry, I should have mentioned that actually in my presentation. We do have the contact information for our graduate coordinators, as well as the department grad officers or associate chairs on our website. So yeah, I'm sorry I don't have that information here, but feel free to reach out to the department.
Great, thanks, Heidi. I have posted a link in the chat there as well to the list of department and program graduate coordinators. The graduate coordinators are a really good source of information for anything specific to the department, and their contact information is all on that site. All right, our next question is from an international student. They are wondering if the International Doctoral Student Award, or IDSA, is awarded to every eligible international student.
Okay, well, yes. The IDSA, or International Doctoral Student Award, is given automatically to eligible students following the parameters of the program. I don't want to get into too much detail on this program. There are details on our website. It's actually, I think, in the awards database. But yes, as long as you are within the time frame as indicated in the, in the program parameters, then you would automatically receive this award.
Great. Thank you, Heidi.
And actually the intention of that award is because international tuition is higher than domestic tuition, what it does is by receiving that award or issuing that award, it ends up bringing the international tuition down to be equivalent to domestic tuition.
Great, thank you, Heidi. I have posted a link to the IDSA information on our website, and I know previously in this session I had also given a link to the awards database when Heidi was talking about that. So that's, as she mentioned, another way that you can find information about those awards.
Thanks, Sarah.
All right, so the next question we have here, regarding amount or possibilities of funding, this student is wondering if there are any differences between being admitted in September versus being admitted in January.
Um, so my understanding is, and I'm not an admissions expert, so my understanding is that a lot of grad programs have rolling admissions. So in other words, that students are often admitted in either the spring, fall, or winter terms. But in terms of funding, again, specific departmental funding or internal funding will be dependent on the program. But the scholarship competitions that I've covered in this presentation, they only occur once per year, which is usually like in the fall. Now the CGS-M, that deadline is December 1st, but the review of the applications occurs throughout December and into January, February, March. Yeah, you just have to be cognizant of the fact that those competitions only occur once per year, and then the results are normally released in March or April.
Great, thanks, Heidi. All right, so the next student here is an international prospective student interested in a PhD in the engineering department. So they said that they looked at the website related to the international funding opportunities and are still just wondering what is the maximum funding available for a PhD student in an engineering department?
Okay, so yeah, as I mentioned in one of the first slides, the minimum funding for PhD students is just over 24,000, but engineering is a very large faculty, and it really depends on the program. Most PhD students, I believe, in engineering will get more than that minimum. And it will also depend on the what kind of grants that the supervisor has as well, and how they can support the students. So again, I'm sorry, I know that I'm referring a lot of questions and students to go to the department grad coordinator, but some of these are quite specific, and it's the department grad coordinator and the proposed supervisor that would best be suited to answer these types of questions.
Great, thanks, Heidi. And I'll just refer our attendees back then to the link I sent in the chat just a little bit ago to the list of department and program coordinators if they would like to reach out.
Perfect.
Okay, so our next question, is there any travel fee assistance offered?
Travel fee. I'm not quite sure what this might mean. I'm thinking that and somebody, whoever asked the question, can always reach out to me after. But if the intention is whether Waterloo offers any fees to help international students cover costs to travel from their home country to Waterloo, then no, we don't offer that kind of support.
Okay, thank you, Heidi. And yeah, with any of the other questions as well, if there are, any follow-up questions that you'd like, you can submit them through the chat or through the Q&A, and we'll try to ask, or we'll work on answering those if you'd have any follow-up questions.
Now, let me just, sorry, Sarah, to interrupt. I'm just trying to ponder this question, and if they're thinking about like maybe for conferences, like travel, award coverage to help with travel costs, we do have the research travel assistantship. Again, because of COVID and the restrictions on travel right now, if a student is presenting their research at a conference, they could still apply for that award. But I'm not entirely sure sort of the context of the question, so whoever asked it, feel free to reach out to me and I can follow up with you.
Great, thanks, Heidi. Okay, so our next question here is, what are the application process and requirements and deadlines to register or apply for scholarships?
Okay, so applying for admission is different than applying for scholarships. So, and just because you apply for admission doesn't mean that you're going to be considered automatically for one of these tri-agency or OGS scholarships. So, and because we have, there's the tri-agency master scholarship, there's the tri-agency doctoral scholarship, there's the OGS international competition and OGS QE2 domestic competition. There's different processes and timelines to applying. So please visit our website for starting your research into applying to a grad program at Waterloo, where you will find details on how to apply for admission, the admission requirements, as well as the funding opportunities. There's a lot of information on our website. So please check out the Future Students webpage, and that should be a really good starting point.
Great, thank you, Heidi. I know I had posted a link to our Future Student site a while back, but it was a little while ago, so I've reposted it there in the chat for you, where you can find that additional information. Okay, so our next question is around scholarship applications. This person applications ask about what research you will conduct in grad studies. If you're a new student who hasn't been accepted anywhere yet and you're not certain about what research you'll conduct, what would you put in the application? And what are the chances of being selected to receive external funding?
Okay. So institutions receive a quota of awards, as I indicated, for the tri-agency and the provincial scholarships. And I did present some numbers of applications that we receive. So we do always receive more applications than we have allocation for. So it is very competitive, but if you're eligible, really, you should be applying. Like, it's a great opportunity. It's a great experience. If you are considering going on, to further your education or go on to a postdoctoral opportunity, it's a good experience to apply for these opportunities. And the candidate pool can vary from year to year. The number of applications can either increase or decrease. It really can fluctuate. So now, if you haven't yet decided on a specific project, you still need to provide a detailed description of a proposed research project, like something that interests you, even if you're not 100% sure that's what you want to do. If you are successful in the scholarship and you decide, you know what, I want to change sort of the research that I want to do, that's okay. As long as your research still falls under the mandate of the tri-agency that is issuing the scholarship, that's okay. So, we understand that if you're an undergraduate student, you may not necessarily know exactly what you want to do, but I mean, if you are interested in pursuing graduate studies, there's probably something that has some allure to you to draw you and attract you into grad studies. There must be something, that's sparking your interest. So please write about it, try and be as detailed as possible. Again, seek input from a variety of resources who could provide constructive feedback on your proposal.
Great, thank you, Heidi. Okay, the next question is, what is the ideal timeframe to secure funding and choose a supervisor?
So again, if you're eligible and you're, in your last year of undergrad, you should be applying for the competitions now and actually annually as appropriate. So the master scholarships, the tri-agency master is only 1 year, as are the OGS QE2. The tri-agency doctoral scholarships can be for 1 to 4 years. It depends on where you are in your program, in your PhD program. So you should be applying annually as appropriate and as per the parameters of the scholarship competition that you're applying for. So again, students who are not yet in a grad program can still apply with the goal of that you're going to be successful so that you can have one of these scholarships when you start your program. As for choosing a supervisor, that really depends on the program. As to when that happens, whether it's, prior to you applying for admission or whether it's in, I think for the most part, it's for a master's program, it's like within your first year, maybe first 1 or 2 terms. But again, I could be wrong on that. So it's best to check with the department grad coordinator on that. Our department grad coordinators, oh my gosh, we love them. We're so grateful to them. They have a wealth of knowledge. They have to know information from, beginning to end, from the admission stage to the scholarship stage to, graduation and everything in between. And we have really great relationships with them, and they're just such a wealth of knowledge. So please reach out to them.
Great, thanks, Heidi. All right, next question. Is there a deposit fee for international students? And if so, can I wait to pay until having a result from any funding agencies I applied to?
So actually, there is no deposit fee for international students. You can pay your tuition from a variety of ways. You can make a bank payment. You can use your OSAP, use your scholarship rewards to pay towards your tuition or fees. You can use, if you're getting a TA or an RA, you can set up a payment plan with those earnings through Student Financial Services. What we don't do is, what we don't allow is you to pay it like on an installment plan, meaning, you're waiting, you can pay, say, $2,500 or $1,000 a month for 4 months. Student Financial Services does not allow that. So, yeah, but otherwise you can, we don't need a fee, like a deposit fee, and you can arrange your fees by using a promissory note and setting up a payment plan using a TA or RA, or having your scholarships applied to your tuition.
Great,
Hopefully
thanks, Heidi.
that helps. Okay.
Yeah, that's great. All right, so the next question is the minimum funding used to pay the tuition, and then students would receive the net balance. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes. So the minimum funding is what you would receive, and then you have to take into consideration that you would use that funding to pay your tuition and fees. Yes.
Great, thanks, Heidi. All right, so the next question here is good academic standing determined over the full 4 years of study? So I'm assuming they're meaning of undergraduate study, or rather the last 2 full-time years of study. So for example, the 3rd and 4th year only.
So for the majority of the scholarships, again, it depends sort of on the scholarship that you're applying for. In some cases we use an overall average, but typically it would be each of the last 2 years, full-time years, has to be 80% or more. So 1 year is equivalent to basically, a 12-month span. So if we're looking at an undergraduate transcript, there has to be at least 2 full-time academic terms within that 12-month span. If there isn't, then we would need to go back further. And if we're looking at a graduate transcript, oftentimes, students are not necessarily taking a course or more than one course because they're working on their thesis. So as long as they're registered full-time, then we would look at that 12-month span and make sure that there's at least, again, 2 full-time terms within that 12-month span.
Great, thanks, Heidi. Okay, so our next question is from a domestic student. Is it better to find as much funding as possible before applying to the program you want, or after being accepted? Person is saying, it seems like financial aid organizations would want to know that you're definitely going to school, but you're more likely to be accepted if you already have financial backing. It's hard to know where to start.
It is. It can be, as I said, it can be overwhelming. So it's definitely recommended, strongly recommended, that you do have a financial plan in place. We know that circumstances can arise, emergencies can arise, and we get that. But again, check out our website under future students and the programs. It will give you sort of an estimated cost of the tuition and fees, and it will also, you can, again, normally for research-based master's students, there should be some funding provided to you. If you want to know specifics on how much, then it should be reaching out to your department coordinator. And then again, for your PhD, well, you can count on receiving at least, $24,000 at this point for a 12-month span. So it's a conversation that you really have to have with the department, finding out what funding you will for sure be receiving or what is available. And then, it's a decision that you will have to make and in figuring out, what the next steps are.
Great, thanks, Heidi. All right, so I'm just gonna point out that it's 12:20, so we have about 10 minutes left. So we're going to have just time for one or two more questions that we'll respond to live, depending on how long they are, and then we will have to wrap up. So I just want to remind you that if your questions haven't been answered, we will be providing responses to that along with a list of the questions and answers in written form so that you can go back and take a look. Okay, so the next question that we have is there any external funding available for international students, or is it mainly for domestic students? And this person is specifically referring to graduate research-based and course-based programs.
Okay, so as I indicated, for international students, we do have the Ontario Graduate Scholarship. Now at Waterloo, our quota for international students is 5. We usually, we'll have a lot more applications than that. I think it's usually around 100 applications from international students, and we can give out 5 of those every year. The other major scholarship at this time is the Vanier. That is the most prestigious of the tri-agency doctoral scholarships. That competition actually takes place earlier. It's the first of the tri-agency graduate scholarships that launches every year. And that one is for international students. Actually, what the agencies like with that one is they really encourage students to go to an institution where they have not already done their bachelor's or master's degree. It's really sort of a recruiting type of scholarship because there can be benefit in students branching out and getting experience from a lot of different institutions, not just staying at the same one. So the Vanier, you have to apply for at the institution where you want to hold the scholarship. So we've had applications from students from the US actually applying for the Vanier to be held here. And so it would be our responsibility to endorse or not that student. It really depends on the caliber of the applicant.
Great, thank you, Heidi. We'll just do, this will be our last question now. I'll have one more quick question here.
Okay.
So the last one. So for applying to these federal and provincial external scholarships, do I have to list which school I am applying to if I don't know?
No, I believe for maybe some of the doctoral, you have to indicate like maybe your proposed institution or proposed supervisor that you're hoping to work with. But again, that you're not bound to that. If you change your mind or decide that that's not the research or that's not the supervisor you want to work with, after you've been successful, that's okay, as long as the research that you are pursuing still falls under the mandate of the agency to which you're applying. Now, the only thing is, though, with the Vanier, again, it's not transferable. You have to apply at the institution where you want to be considered. And then for the CGS-M, you can, it's like an application portal. You identify 3 institutions where you want your application to be considered. The institutions don't see what other institutions you've identified. It's just sort of in the portal. It's not actually on your application, to my recollection. But yeah, we don't see, so if you've identified Waterloo and Brock and McMaster as your 3 institutions, we won't see that you selected Brock and McMaster. We will just get your application because you identified us as one.
Thank you, Heidi. So huge thank you to Heidi to responding to so many questions today. Before I kind of do my official wrap up, I just want to see if Heidi has any maybe final thoughts or advice to students as they're thinking about funding their graduate education.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. In closing, I guess I just would like to reiterate that we can definitely appreciate that all of this may seem daunting, but there's a team of resources here to support you as you navigate into looking at funding options for grad studies here at Waterloo. And I encourage you to check out our website for information. We try and post as much information as we can. Inquire with the department graduate coordinator in the department. I don't know how many times I've said that. I've lost track. So please reach out to them. And even to our office for any assistance. I wish you all the best, and really the next steps are up to you. Thanks, Sarah.
Great, thank you, Heidi. So as I mentioned at the beginning, this is the first of several supports and events for prospective graduate students. So I want to let you know that the next session for prospective grad students will be taking place on November 18th and is designed to support you in writing your personal statement. Some events will also take place the following week on November 25th to walk you through the application process and answer any questions you may have about that. There will be 3 separate webinars for preparing your applications so that we have sessions specifically for each audience: prospective doctoral students, prospective domestic masters, and prospective international master students. I'm just going to post a link in the website here to our events listing page so that you can go and see the events there. You can also, as I mentioned at the beginning, sign up for our mailing list if you're not already signed up for that. That way you will get notified of any following things there. So stay tuned for the event recording and the written responses to the questions we've covered today. I do also know there were a few questions that were flagged for live response that we didn't quite have time to get to. So know that responses to those questions will be posted, so you can stay tuned to those. And I'll just post one more link in the chat here for you. That is where the recording and written responses from today's session will be posted. As well, if you are on the mailing list, you will get notified of that as well. So thank you so much for joining us today and for all your great questions. Again, huge thank you to Heidi for responding to those, and a big thank you to her team and Rachel in the background as well. It looks like we got over 90 questions here today that were responded to, so that's a lot of work on their end, providing you with all those responses. So huge thank you to everyone for that. All right, so I hope everyone has a good day, and hopefully we will see you back at some of the events coming up later in November. Bye, everyone.